I'm Bill Mott for 99.1 FM Talk and My Country KCMY. At the recent convention for North American Wild Sheep in Reno, I got an opportunity to speak with the president of the California Wild Sheep Foundation, Ken Fish, and I began by asking him how the organization got its start.
We started the chapter 10 years ago. There was some activity that preceded that, but we formally organized a decade ago.
The sheep foundations in other states have been established for a number of years. California being the largest state, highest population, why did it take so long to get going in California?
Because it's an all-volunteer activity, and prior to that time, no one had the vision or the passion or something to push it forward.
Well, since the inception of the foundation, what sort of progress have you made?
Well, as you can see from our chart here, in 2003, there were 11 sheep tags issued in the state of California. And just for the sake of clarity for your listeners, all of those sheep tags are for desert bighorn sheep. There are other species that exist around the United States, but in California, they're all desert sheep. And since 2003, we've actually increased the number of tags so that this year we know we'll have 27 tags issued in the state. It could be more, but we're trying not to overpromise and underdeliver, so we'll just leave it at 27, which means we've more than doubled the number of tags in about a decade.
What's the sheep population like in California?
Healthy overall. There are some pockets where it's under pressure. Where there's pressure, it's a little bit of poaching, but more commonly due to pastorella, where domestic sheep are infecting the wild sheep populations, and then we have a little bit of predation from coyotes in selected areas. But overall, the populations are growing, and it's actually with that in mind that we are having what we call our drive to 35, meaning we are looking to work with the Department of Fish and Game in California to get to 35 sheep tags by the year 2017.
And what percentage of the population would that be?
Oh, it'd be minuscule. We've got about 30,000 sheep in the state. So if we had today 35 tags, it would be less than 1% of the population.
Now, I noticed in other states, you mentioned a problem with domestic sheep. It seems like in a lot of areas they'll get the numbers up, and then they'll get some virus comes in, and it'll wipe out a significant number of the population. And has that happened in California, or are you just currently trying to prevent that from happening?
Mostly we're trying to prevent it. We did have one small instance of it in the eastern Sierra near the town of Bishop about 2 years ago. There was a small herd of sheep that got contacted by domestic sheep. Pastorella outbreak, we lost about 400 animals. But in general, we haven't had that problem in California.
Okay, it hasn't had the kind of devastating effects it has had in other states.
That's right. If I remember correctly, they had a significant kill in Nevada last year, I think it was. I may have my year off by one, but I think it was last year, and it was a devastating impact to most of the northern Nevada sheep herds. We have not had that problem, but it is something we and DFG constantly monitor because the threat is there. And in fact, I was just at the Life Member Breakfast this morning, and they were announcing that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, together with the National Forest Service, have now recognized the risk that pastorella presents to bighorn sheep populations, and those two federal entities are now taking steps to try to segregate domestic sheep from wild sheep wherever there is some, adjacent pasturage for these two animals, so that they won't mingle and we won't get die-offs in, areas where national forest, is extensive, Idaho, Oregon, places like that.
Tell me about the sheep hunt. Are those resident only, or do they have some non-resident tags as well?
No, we get a couple of non-resident tags each year in California, but, like many states, our Fish and Game is very protective of how many they will issue to out-of-state hunters, so the vast majority of the tags we have do go to California residents.
What sort of projects are you involved in to try and keep those sheep numbers up and expand them? And what is your total goal? You say you want 35 tags by 2017. What would you like to see the total population at by then?
To support 35 tags? Yeah. I'd like to see, a herd size of maybe 40,000 animals. And we think we can get there. The things that would potentially prohibit that or interfere with that would be, of course, the disease that we've talked about, and then there's development that's going on, constantly. The West is no longer the Wild West, and in particular in California, there's been a great deal of effort made for solar projects in the Mojave Desert and moving up through the US 395 corridor. To the extent that those projects proceed without proper environmental impact statements, it's possible that the migration corridors that these sheep use to go from one mountain range to the other could be interrupted. Not that they will, but they could be. Many of these energy companies are not sensitive to the impact on large animals like bighorn sheep. And if those migration corridors were to be disrupted, it could result in, I would say, a plateauing of the populations, because they wouldn't be able to go from summer to winter range. They wouldn't be able to interbreed properly, that sort of thing.
How quickly would you be able to tell if that was happening?
Well, it's something we're monitoring right now, and we're engaged in the process. But I would say there are 3 projects we're aware of that I would prefer not to name, because this is going on radio. But there are 3 projects that we're aware of right now in the eastern Mojave, which are very, very large projects, 10-plus square miles each. And these are primarily banks of solar panels. And if those were to go through as they're currently proposed, we would consider those to be significant risks to the populations of sheep in those immediate areas.
Now, if folks want to find out more about your organization, how can they do it?
They can go to our internet site, www.cawsf.org. That's the California Wild Sheep Foundation.org.
Bill Mott for My Country KCMY and 99.1 FM Talk.